Good morning. Nice to see you all this morning. Well, as a little introduction to the schedule change that we're making, I wanted to just lay out for you why we're doing this. 3 years ago, we initiated a brand new schedule that was kind of an out-of-the-box type of schedule. We were doing that in response to some of the concerns that we were hearing from parents and students. And one of those things was that they had so many classes at once. And because many of our classes at that time, prior to this most recent schedule, were meeting 3 days a week or 2 days a week all year long. And so consequently, the kids had a lot to keep track of. And so in response to that, a new schedule was made that created some work time in the actual meeting that was or in the actual classroom, because another part of the concern was that the study halls, most of them were at the end of the day, and they weren't necessarily being used wisely. So they responded to that by increasing the length of the class periods, decreasing from 8 periods to 7, adding the work time into the class period. But then we also reduced the number of classes down to a 6 amount, I think. I wish I could start this videotape all over. I'm totally tripping up here. Yeah, sorry. Oh my goodness. What I want to say is that we decreased then the number of classes a student had at any given time by making them semester classes instead of all year. So the 3 days a week and the 2 day a week classes got reduced down to 5 days a week, but for one semester only. And that way the kids didn't have so much to deal with all at once. So those are the two biggest changes around that. And for 3 years we've implemented that. A couple of years ago when we did our annual, actually it's biannual now, survey, we found that the scores for the schedule weren't nearly as high as the scores we were getting for all the other parts of our program. And so that was a flag for us that we paid attention to. We also thought, well, it's newer, let's give it a little bit more time. But anecdotally, what we continue to hear from parents and students is that they just wish they could have their study hall back. The work time is shorter. Good morning.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. The work time provides 15 to 20 minutes tops in the class for the students to be able to work. And what happens for a lot of kids is that they don't have that opportunity to really dig in and start working. Some kids, it just takes longer to really get focused on, especially if it's some type of a writing assignment. A lot of kids, it just takes longer to think about, what am I going to write? And then they feel like once they get writing, then the time is up. So then consequently what happens is some kids just sort of throw up their hands and just don't even really try to use the work time very wisely because they feel like, well, that's not going to help me anyway. So because this was an issue, and also because some of the reports we were getting is that some of our teachers, love them, would end up teaching over into the work time. And when you stop and think about any time you've given a presentation, to end it to the minute is impossible. I mean, that's just not realistic. So naturally there is going to be that happening. So what we decided is, let's take the best of both worlds. Let's take the best of the schedule that we developed 3 years ago and marry that with something that's even better from a work time perspective. And so what we've come up with is more similar to our old schedule, with the exception that we kept the semester classes. And we were able to move the study halls away from the last period of the day for every grade except 7th grade. 7th grade will still have their study hall at the end of the day. That was just the only place that it would work. But it's also going to be in smaller groups. Our study halls used to be large, just because it was a money-saving tactic on our part as a school. But now we are able to make those groups smaller, and that's going to be more conducive to studying. Another thing that we're talking about doing is actually adding some of the classical music in the background to try to keep things calmer, and it's also very conducive to learning. So these are some of the things that we're talking about for the study hall. But before I get too detailed, I want to go ahead and tell you what isn't going to change in the schedule for next year. So what is staying the same? So some of you are just, I think, coming in with 6th graders, so you might not know about these things, but others of you already have kids in the middle and upper school, and so you might be concerned that some of these things were changing. And we really value, like I said, the semester-long classes. We'll be keeping those as they are. We will remain with 4 separate lunches. So that's the K through 2 lunch, the 3 through 5 lunch, the middle school lunch, and the upper school lunch. We will keep our houses exactly the way they are right now. We will keep our Kiwi toss time, which is that break time for the students in the morning. We will keep our assemblies the same on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the core courses obviously will remain the same. We're not taking any away. The one change that we are making is because we wanted to have labs added back into our science. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The best place to put both the Kiwi toss and the house was back to back after the second period of the day. And so those are going to be, we'll start with the Kiwi toss time to make sure that they do get that break time, and then they'll go from the Kiwi toss time to the house time. Okay, so that's what's staying the same. Then what is changing? So what's changing with our school day is that we are eliminating the work time, as I mentioned earlier, and replacing that with a study hall. Now the middle school will have 5 study hall days a week, so every single day of the week they're going to get a study hall. And for the upper school, they will have 4 study halls a week, which is truly amazing. In our old schedule before the prior one, our original schedule I should say, we actually only had 3 study halls a week at that time. So this is an improvement from that. And then of course we're adding back in that 8th period because that's how we're gaining the study hall. All the periods will be 40 to 45 minutes, so the first 6 periods of the day will be 45 minutes, and then the last couple of periods will be 40 minutes. Those electives will stay at the end of the day like they are now during the 8th period. We did add 5 more minutes into the school day to gain the time we needed to provide the 45 minutes for all of those classes. Still have 3 minutes of passing time, still have the lunches the same length. And then our teacher office hours is something we're adding to make up for the fact that they don't have the work time. So one of the reasons why we added that work time in 3 years ago was so that the students could be talking to the actual teacher that they had at that moment. So if they were in math class, they could talk to the math teacher while they were doing their work. If they were in English class, they could talk to the English teacher. So now, obviously, when we're cutting it back down to 45 minutes and adding the study halls in, there will still be some work time in the classes. There always was. So some days teachers will just say, oh, I know you're working on a paper. I'm going to give you this whole class period to work on your paper today. Or I know you're working on this group project. I'm going to give you this whole class period to work on this group project. So that will still happen. But by and large, math assignments and that kind of thing are probably going to happen mostly in the study hall. So in order to make sure that those students have an opportunity to talk to their teachers, we've built in this office hour time period at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, all of our full-time teachers will be available in their classrooms from 3:15 to 3:45. If they coach, it will probably be 3:40, just to be clear, because they'll need to get to their practice that will start at 3:45. For people who do have kids in sports, that was one big question, is how do we do this? Because sports usually start at 3:30. And what Mr. St. Martin felt they could do is run captain's practices from 3:30 to 3:45. So he will instruct the coaches to just have their captains start practicing until they can get there. And some of our coaches aren't staff members, so it doesn't matter for everyone, but we do have quite a few coaches on our staff. So that'll be a big benefit, I think, for our kids. And you as parents can also come in. So if you're concerned about your child and have a question, you can be certain that if you come between 3:15 and 3:45, you will find your child's teacher in their classroom. And so I think that's going to be beneficial for you as well. And then what's changing with our science program. All of you should have a sheet that talks about the science options now. And what we've done is, this is another benefit with this new schedule. Prior, our original schedule, we used to have labs that were called out in an actual separate period for our high school science classes. So science was the one subject that actually lost some time when we went to that new schedule. All the other classes gained time, but it came at the expense of a lot of things, and obviously science being one of them. So with this new schedule, we've added that lab time back in for the high school science classes. So the biology, the chemistry, and the physics, they will all have 2 days a week where the class is 2 periods back to back. And that way, that allows for the teacher to get labs done that maybe take longer than 1 period. Setup and what have you is all going to be built into that. Also, we've added an advanced, and then on the days that they don't have their science lab, that's where we fit in the high school study halls. So the back-to-back periods are only 2 days a week for science, and then on those other 3 days, they will have study halls. And then what we've done is we've taken 1 day out per week from some of the classes, the language, apologetics, some of those other semester-long classes, to gain a 4th study hall per week for the high school students. But then in addition to adding these labs back into our science program, we've also added some classes. So several years ago, we changed our sequence for science, really in response to Dr. Dillner, our chair of our science department, her concerns about wanting our science program to be as rigorous as possible while also being accessible to our students. And what she felt that we should do is make biology happen first in 9th grade rather than waiting till 10th grade. So we used to have earth science in 9th, 10th grade was biology, 11th grade was chemistry, and 12th grade was physics. So several years ago then, we changed that, and biology is now, we dropped earth science because they get that in lower school and middle school. They get then biology in 9th grade, chemistry in 10th, physics in 11th, and then in 12th grade, we were planning that they would have this option of either advanced chemistry or a lesser science for those kids who don't want to go into a STEM career. And so that's what next year is the first year that we'll be doing this. And so we're super excited to be offering this advanced chemistry class. And then we'll also be offering environmental science for those kids who don't particularly like science and don't plan to go into a science career. And then with that, we've combined the 11th and 12th grade because we would like to be able to have at least 8 kids for advanced chemistry if possible, and our current junior class is pretty small going into senior year. So this also gives them an opportunity to be together. We hear that there's a lot of crossover. That's why the whole point of our houses being multi-grade is so that they can get to know kids in other grades around them. So this will allow that as well for the 11th and 12th graders. And then we're adding new science electives. The anatomy and physiology class is going to be added for during the 8th grade. I don't remember which semester. And then astronomy as well. And then we'll keep the coding class that we added last year, and we'll keep the digital aesthetics works lab class as well. So we continue to add electives to our elective course and add elective options, I should say. And with that, then, we did decrease some of the requirements in our electives to open up more space for the kids to choose electives. So, for example, we used to require 2 years of Phi Ed. Now we're decreasing that to 1 year of Phi Ed. And that opens up more opportunities then for the kids to take these elective classes that we're offering. And then the handouts, we also provided the math sequence. That's not new, but we thought it would just be a good reminder for you what the options are in math. And then we also give you your 6th through 7th or 6th through 12th grade schedules. If you want to take more than just your own child's, that's totally fine. If you're kind of curious about what your child's schedule would look like going forward, you can take those schedules as well. And then I'm happy to open it up for questions. You don't have to feel like you have to have any. This is a small group, as I said. We had about 25 people in here on Monday night, so there were a few questions, not a lot. It's a little simpler, so I don't know that there's a whole lot to ask about it. It is a little simpler than our old schedule. One thing I'm also really excited about this schedule, and I didn't think to mention this on Monday night, is it's going to reduce the number of bells that are ringing. Because we always had the teaching bell and the work time bell, to kind of to remind the teacher, hey, it's work time now. And so the bells are ringing a lot. So sometimes I think that kind of adds to the stress level. So I think that having fewer bells ringing throughout the day is really going to be helpful for the kids as well. Yes?
There's one thing that was brought up on Monday night that I thought maybe would be important to share too.
Okay.
In the 11th and 12th grade, they can also take physics still too.
Oh,
We didn't
yes.
list that on
Thank you.
there,
We didn't
so-
list that, but it is listed. That is a good question. That's on your sheet. So the kids in 11th grade, well, we want everybody taking physics. So they either take it 11th grade or 12th grade. So if they're a student that really isn't a big, huge science fan, then they probably would want to take physics in 11th grade and then take their environmental science class 12th grade. But they can reverse it. They could take their environmental science as an 11th grader and then take physics as a 12th grader. So yes, there's 3. Thank you for pointing that out, because that isn't on there, but it is on your sheet. So if they take physics as 11th graders, then as 12th graders, they're either going to take advanced chemistry or they're going to take environmental science. If they take advanced chemistry as an 11th grader, then they're going to take physics as a senior. If they were to take environmental science as an 11th grader, then they're going to need to take physics in 12th grade. They could take advanced chem if they wanted to, but yeah. So thank you. That was a good clarification.
So the physics in 11th or 12th grade is like in a just deeper than what is in 8th grade?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yep. That's one of the things that I actually really love about our program is that we teach science in discrete units starting as young as elementary school. Generally speaking, schools teach general science in grades, like 1st grade all the way up through 9th grade. And so it's all mixed. And I think it's a little harder for the kids to really wrap their heads around the information. And so that's why we actually do it the way we do it, where they get the biology, the chemistry, the physics. And yeah, each time they're going deeper and learning more advanced concepts. Yeah. Good question.
Looking at the map, do we stick with Saxon all the way up until 12th grade?
No, not at all
Okay.
actually. Only through Algebra Half now.
Okay.
We used to do it through Algebra 1, and then it always was different, but we've actually changed away from Saxon Algebra 1 as well. And honestly, because it has changed, I would need you to refer to Mrs. Smith as our curriculum director to know exactly what the textbooks are.
Yeah.
Because we have made changes even recently. I could have told you what it was, 8 years ago. So, yes, but what we do with that is we let the math teachers really drive that. The middle and upper school math teachers, we really believe that they know what works best for the kids and what they're trying to accomplish. And so we really rely on them. They make recommendations. They meet as a team. They select a few. We order them for them. They evaluate them together, and then they recommend. And we usually just say, okay, that's what you think. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Is there any, are there going to be any options for, like I see the AP Calc and stuff, for college credit classes?
The
for,
advanced
like,
chemistry will either be college credit on the spot, or it would be one that you could then have your child test out of at the college level. Dr. Dillner is actually working with Northwestern to try to bring that about. But it's a process, and it's hard to say for sure whether that will be something that will happen. That's actually one of the reasons why we want 8 kids in there, because that's their preference, is that there would be at least 8 kids in order for them to call it a college credit course. But Dr. Gilner is really confident that even if we don't get that designation, that the kids would be able to test out once they get to the college level. Because the only problem, and this is something that's important for all of our families really to hear, is that these PSEO credits that you can gain through various institutions often don't transfer to another institution. So really the best thing is for the kids to just be well prepared so that they can go into whatever college they're going into and then take tests to test out of various things. They can test out of some of their language credits, they can test out of whatever they want to try for. And that's really the best way to do it, because colleges have their own rules about what the requirements are. And a lot of times, and it's becoming increasingly true, that the colleges aren't respecting the AP as much as they used to, they're not respecting the PSEO as much as they used to. And while those are still good things, it's not nearly as widespread as it used to be. And some of that is because they're finding that mastery, especially with the AP classes, mastery is just not there. So.
I can attest to that. My son got a 4 on the AP stats test, and his school wouldn't take it.
They won't take it.
No.
Yeah.
So,
And 4 is the second highest.
yeah, the 5 is the
Yes,
highest.
yeah.
So,
And it usually, like in the old days, most colleges took at least a 3 or higher. And I think some of this started with Dartmouth, which I predicted this a long time ago. Actually, maybe Jenica remembers me talking about this. Because I saw the writing on the wall. They're teaching to the test, is what they're doing. Teachers can actually go take classes on how to teach an AP course. And we had our teacher, because we do offer the 2 math classes, and one of our math teachers went to one of these training sessions, and he came back and he said, "Oh, this was so great." And I said, "How was it?" He goes, "Oh man, it was great." He goes, I was teaching this and this and this, and I found out that that's not even on the test, and so they said I should do this, this, and this." And I said, "Oh, so they taught you how to teach to the test?" And he went, "Yeah, I guess so." So this is what's happening. And Dartmouth wrote an article, or I saw an article back in 2014, that Dartmouth was no longer going to accept AP credits starting in 2018. And it's for that reason, that they're finding that the kids have not had mastery of the material. Additionally, just kind of bolster what I'm saying, we had a terrible accident with one of our teachers. He fell off a ladder at church and was out for about 3 months. And during that time, I had to scramble and try to hire a math teacher that could teach calculus, because he was our upper level AP Calc teacher. And one of the people that applied for the position was from the University of Minnesota. He was a graduate student there, and he was doing tutoring with math students. And we got talking about this very issue, and he said, because AP is the worst thing. He said, "I can guarantee you that almost all of my tutoring students are AP students, because they didn't master the material, and then they get put up in the next level, and they really didn't know what they took in their AP, and now I'm having to tutor them to help them get caught up." And he said, "If you're going to take an AP class, I just recommend that you would take it again as a college student."
wow.
And so it's real. It's very real. So I don't know how I got off on that. So any other questions? All right. Well, I thank you for coming, and if you do have further questions, obviously you know where to find me. I'm happy to take calls or a quick meeting. And Teresa Clark, by the way, I want to say thank you. She is the one who developed this whole schedule, and it is a big, big task. So thank you. Yes, and if you do have specific questions about the schedule, she also can answer those questions. Probably even better than I can. So, all right, thanks for being here today.